Hi, this is Mark from Skywagon University. We're going to do a quick look at this plane. What is it? A 172 or 182 or 182 RG? 2 windows, slope tail. It's actually a 210. It's a Cessna 210. It's a 60. It's the first year. So we've done a series of model year changes on 210s, and after 67, they're all kind of very similar. But from 60 to 66, there's a lot of differences, and some other videos show the other years. So and I'm going to repeat this a lot in the lecture, in the presentation. 60 and 61 are like this. 62 and 63 are like a 206 fuselage. They're a 205. They're basically a 206 fuselage, 182 wings, 182 flaps and ailerons, 182 tail, but an injected 470 260 horse Continental with a 1500 hour TBO. That's 62 and 63, 260 horse. They look like little 206s, but they're 182 wings and tail on them. Then 64, 65, and 66 are the 206s with retractable gear, and I've said that a lot on a lot of other videos. So those planes have got 520s, got 1700 hour TBOs, they've got the 206 longer flaps, the 206 big fries aileron, the 206 tail, 206 engine, and when they're sitting parked with their gear down and everything closed, they look like a 206. You'd think it was a 206, same exact configuration except 2 doors and a baggage door at the back. Unlike the 206s, which have 1 door and a utility door, unless it's a P206, so it means it's got 2 front doors because it's passenger. But getting back to this is a 60, first year of the Cessna 210. So we'll have a look around it. 60, 61s are like this. 62 and 3s are 205 RGs, and 64, 5 and 6s are 206 RGs. They're all 210s, and the only one that's a turbo factory option is a 66. And then just for FYI, beyond 66, 67 and all the way to 86, they have no struts. And they have the cantilever wing, and I've done a video on those. But so let's have a quick look at this 60. This is the first year of Cessna's Centurion 210. So, under the front, cowling off. It comes off in 2 halves like a 206 does, or the 210s do. Ribbed underneath. Put them down carefully because the corners will bend on the ground over time, and then don't stand on it. So, engine is an IO 470, and I remember IO injected, fuel injected, O opposed, flat, horizontal opposed, Continental 6-cylinder 470, 470 cubic inches, 260 horsepower. So this is the interesting thing about this plane. This plane is considerably less than 100 grand. A 182 RG, which is made from 78 to 86, is a 6-cylinder powered retractable 4-seater, exactly like this, but it's 235 horsepower, like Lycoming 540. This is 260 horsepower, so it's $100,000 cheaper with 25 horsepower more, and the same useful load and same cruise speed. So these early 210s, you're going to think gear, gear, gear. I'm going to talk about gear in a minute. These early 210s are really an excellent cross-country 4-seat retractable high-speed, high-performance complex plane. Anyway, here's the IO 470, 1500 hour TBO, very conventional. You've got a 12-volt plug-in here. You've got 2 exhaust systems that come out. They don't meet in the middle. They just have 2 separate pipes. And then the conventional sort of constant speed prop and 2600 RPM for takeoff and 2400 RPM in cruise. And because it's injected, better than an O470, which is in a 182, the injection means it can be more precisely leaned on the mixture. So this engine will run on like 11 gallons an hour, doing 145 to 150 knots, carrying 1,000 pounds with 65 gallons of gas. So it's actually an excellent plane, but it's been superseded by so many other models that everybody favors those and pays a lot more money, but they shouldn't really be overlooked. So there's the engine. Let's have a look around at a few other things. So when one of these early 210s, right up through where they've all got gear doors, but check with your mechanic first. To open the gear doors on the ground, see they're all closed. The nose gear's closed, the chin closed. Those ones are open because the wheel's sticking out. The mains are all closed. There's a long thin one behind the gear, and there's this is the actual gear door, the big gear door here, clamshell, opens like this. There's one under here. And underneath the baggage area in here, this bump is hollow underneath because that's where the wheels sit when they're up. And the battery is right there behind the wheels under that same platform. So yeah, it's baggage area, 4 seats. So what we're going to do, if you want to open the gear doors on the ground, I'll tell you and then I'll do it, is you pull out the gear extension handle, everything off, and you pump the handle, and the gear doors will all open with the pumps, and you'll see it open. Then, to close them, you turn the master switch on and pump again, and they will all close. Or you just start the plane. If you start the engine, they'll all just close. So I'm going to open them all now manually, and then we'll look up inside the wheel wells, and you can see the myth and legend of the Cessna 210 retractable gear system that's supposed to be so unreliable, but actually, when well maintained, isn't, because after all, this plane is 62 years old, and it's still got all its gear on. So let's try it. Is it opening? Okay, so let's have a quick look in the cockpit to show what I was doing. See, the mains are open, the fronts are, noses are open. Inside here, this handle, all I did, there's the gear, there's the flaps. I pulled this out and I pumped it, and they opened. So in theory, we'll do it in a minute, master switch on, pump again, it'll close them. So let me just stow that and we'll have a look around outside. So here we are underneath it, with everything open. You can see all the little, like, see here's a little hook. That hook there would latch onto here and hold this gear door up. It'll just go up and click shut. These are for the gear legs. And even down at the end of them, there's a little springy area that closes over the hole that the gear leg comes out of. So that closes up, and that, when it touches, if I close it now with the gear down, this just moves out of the way for the gear leg. But in flight, that covers the hole. So everything is closed. So they're pretty aerodynamic. You don't really want to take them off. If you gear one of these up, or any 210 that's got gear doors, there's a mod called the Uvalde gear door mod, and it's to repair it without gear doors. So you put it back together without all this stuff on it because it's cheaper. But it does leave a hole in the fuselage where the wheel goes in and where the gear leg sits and creates a bit more drag. So all you got to do is maintain all this stuff. Make sure that hinges are lubed, latches work, micro switches are where they should be. You know, there's little things up inside here that the gear touches as it comes up to stop pumps running. Everything's, you know, set and rigged. And if you look after it, I mean, this plane, as I was just saying, is 60 years old and it's working fine. So up front, I mean, this will close over the gear leg, this closes over the gear door, and the gear leg comes down, it pivots in here, and the gear leg lies along in here, and the wheel sits up in here, and this all closes. So the skullduggery of it is that it's closed in the air. So the wheels have to, it's not like an 182RG, the wheels just come out, or in an Arrow or a Bonanza. The gear doors have to open, let the gear out, and then close behind them. And then when you put the gear down, the gear has to open, let the gear out, and then close behind them. So it's complicated, and there's a lot of talk about, oh, 210, early gear, early gear, early gear. It's no more problematic than any other thing on any other plane if you look after it. You don't hear all the people who don't have problems going on forums going, wow, I've got a 210, I didn't have problems. You only hear the ones where you do have problems, so it's a myth that gets perpetrated. They're reliable and they're good if they're looked after. So let's go around to the front and have a look up into what's happening up in the nose wheel well. So here we are at the front, gear doors open. Remember, sitting on the ground, parked at a tie down, these will be closed. There's all these little alignment teeth that come in and line them up. And if we look up inside, you can see there's the nose strut, and on the top of it is the hydraulic valve for adjusting the amount of gas and nitrogen in the strut. There's the fuel gasculator. There's some hydraulic pumps and relays. That's all fuel system there. That's nothing to do with the hydraulics of the gear. Here I'll have rods and actuators for pulling the gear doors closed. Basically, the wheel comes up and it shuts it behind it. It pulls it shut as it goes up inside. And then the steering mechanism and the shimmy damper and everything's back there. So these open and close to let them in and out. Those back nose gear doors just open and stay open because the gear is out and has to stay down. So, I mean, it's an ingenious arrangement of pulleys and levers to make it all work, and you just got to look after it. So that's it as if it was being maintained or annualled. Now, there's something about these electric hydraulic pump planes, which would be, I think, right up until like 67, check if I'm right, where you can't just jack them up and swing the gear at an annual like in a 182 turbo RG or an RG like I did in that other video where we just swung the gear on the, you just turn on the master switch and put the gear down, it comes down because it's electric hydraulic. These hydraulics are run by a hydraulic pump on the engine. So the only way to pump its gear up and down on the jacks, other than with a hydraulic mule, is by running the engine, and you'd never run the engine on jack. So when you annual one of these planes, you jack it up, you hook up a mule, which is just basically a hydraulic pump that stands separate from the plane, and you turn it on and it falsely pumps the fluid around the system, and you can make the gear go up and down on the switch. So when you go and annual one of these, you've got to make sure the shop has got one of those. The other thing you can do, if you want to check clearances, sorry, it always happens, I know. The other thing you can do is when it's up on the jacks and you've released the gear and it's swung free, you can manually move it through its arc. And you can manually check clearances and manually check looseness and seals. You can manually check it all, but you can't run it unless you've got a hydraulic mule hooked up to the system to make the gear come up and down in an annual. So let's close these, see if it works the way I said with the master switch on and pumping, and if it doesn't, we'll just carry on looking at the plane and then we'll finish up the video in a bit. So I'm going to now close everything. The theory being, if I turn the master switch on and pump the gear handle without, not the gear lever for up and down, lever, not that, never touch that on the ground unless you know exactly what you're doing. I'm going to turn on the master switch, I'm going to pump the emergency extension handle, which should close everything. And if it doesn't, I'll start the engine, it'll close everything. So let's try it. So, master on, and is it closing? Ah, nice. First we have time for everything. All closed. Okay, when they're closed, then you just stow the handle and turn off the master switch. There we are. I'm always reluctant to do anything with gear on planes on the ground, as you can imagine. So I don't want you all go and pump your gear up and down and have it collapse. So before you do anything like that, even with different model years of 210, like 60, 61, that worked. 62, 63, maybe different. 64, 65, 66, maybe different. So just check on how you open its gear doors when it's sitting on the ground, because you don't want them to collapse, because it may have happened in the past to me. I'll tell you anyway. Okay, I had a 63 210, so that's a 205 RG basically. I'm standing in one door, I got a customer standing in the other door, and he said, can I look in the gear door? Can I look in the wheel wells? Sorry. Can I look in the wheel wells? Like, yeah, sure. So I was pumping it, and the nose gear retracted. It just wheeled up, it just went thud onto the ground. It had a two blade on, and the blades were horizontal, so it just literally crushed the gear doors. It didn't touch the prop, it didn't touch anything, it wasn't, the mains can't move, so it just went thud on, and you can imagine. And I said to the customer, still interested? Bye-bye. So anyway, $7,000 worth of repairs for the gear doors. The gear doors themselves cost $7,000. Not because they're, it's just because they're rare and that's the price of them, so I had to fix it and blah, blah, blah. So just make sure when you do play around with gear door, you know what you're doing as a mechanic with you. So, let's look at the plane itself. I mean, we've seen the gear, we've seen the engine. It's very Cessna. I mean, it's high wing, strutted. It looks just like any other Cessna. They've got this big baggage door on the side, and it can't be any longer because the gear hole is here, obviously. It's spring loaded, so it'll just stay up. It's pretty big. They carry about 1,100 pounds, 1,000 pounds. They have 65 gallons of fuel. Fixed horizontal, not trimmable like an early 182. Like a 182 of this year would be on a jack screw. And this is just a normal flat skinned trimmed horizontal stabilizer with a normal elevator, flat skinned. It doesn't have the Cessna ribs on it, and the normal sloped tail. So it's extremely conventional. It'd be like, I mean, if somebody owned a 182, you could buy this, put the wheels away, and go faster on less gas with the same weight and same useful load. This one's got static wicks on it. It's got a little avionics wingtip tail beacon on it for ADS-B out. And you can see on top of the wings up there, there's two fences. It's got a stall kit on it. It's got aileron trim on it. I mean, I'm 57. This plane was 5 years older than me. So it's amazing that they've lasted as long as they have. And then inside it, you might wonder how well people appoint an old plane like this. This plane isn't $150,000. It's got good airframe time, good engine time, and really nice radios. We'll look at them. And for all that, this plane is like considerably less than 100 grand. It's a lot of bang for the buck on it when you buy one of these. You've got to buy one that's been very well looked after and maintained for all the reasons that we're talking about. So let's have a quick look inside it. Okay, here we are inside. Surprisingly well equipped. So gear first. It's not just a little electric switch, it's hydraulic, okay? So there's an engine running a pump and the pump's making the things move. Flaps, conventional, up, down. They're pumped up, they're pumped down. Gear, up, down, light, light. This is the emergency extension handle I was using to open and close the gear doors. And if there were an emergency in flight, you'd select down, pull the circuit breaker and pump until you see wheels. So that's the handle there. Just keep going until it stops. It's like the last pump will be hydraulic lock. It's got a Garmin 430W in it. It's got two G5s. It's got an S-Tech 30 autopilot with altitude hold coupled. It's got a fuel flow computer, a transponder. The ADS-B is on the tail. There's an old DME in here. And then nice conventional layout. Look at this. Throttle, mouthful pressure directly above it. RPM, tack directly above it. Mixture, fuel flow, fuel pressure directly above it. So it's bam, 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 bam. Very nicely laid out. And then obviously fuel gauges and some CHT, GT over there. Intercom, autopilot selection. No strip in the windshield. It's got aileron trim here, an engine analyzer over here. The master switch, the ignition key and the starter button. You just start that. It will crank with the key off but the master on, and you'll think it's not starting, so always make sure your mags are on. Use your checklist. So a really solid IFR platform for an older plane. So people will say, oh, 60, I wouldn't buy one of those, they're old, they're unreliable, they're this, they're that. They have a fantastic injected 1500 TBO 260 horse engine in them. Like I was saying earlier, 25 horsepower more than a 182 RG that burns 11 gallons an hour. They hold 65 gallons of gas, and you can have a panel like this in it. And down here we've got rudder trim, it's just a big knob that you just turn with an indicator on it. Right there. Fuel selector, trim, and then up inside we've got inertia reel shoulder harnesses, not factory of course, but they lock if they had to, but it makes you able to lean forward. Oxygen, 4 seats, and lots of room in it. I mean, if I slide these up to where you'd be if you were flying, normal size human, tons of room in the back, 4 seats. So it's basically a 182 RG made 25 years before 182 RGs were made. An excellent plane. So we're not going to fly it today. It's somebody else's. We don't need to fly it. I'm really just going over the model year changes of them. So just a quick recap, because there's a lot of numbers. 60, this one, is the first year of Cessna 210. 60, 61s, they are like this. 2 side windows, 4 seats, 260 horse injected. 63 and 64 are 205s. Basically, that's Cessna 205. They are a 206 fuselage, using all the other parts and years of other Cessnas. 206 fuselage, but 182 wings and tail, ailerons, flaps, horizontal and elevator, and a 470, IO 470, 260 horse in those as well. So the first 4 years are 260 horse. Then in 64, 65, and 66, it's the 206 airframe, wings, flap, aileron, tail, engine, 1700 hour TBO 520 at 285 horsepower, 6 seats, more gross weight, more useful load, and basically I call those 206 RGs, and then the so just think of them as first 2 years, second 2 years, third 3 years. Those are the years of 210s. Then in 67, remember 66 first year of turbo only, 67 first year of no struts, and those are the ones who've got the big AD on the carry through spar, and 67 has the high dihedral 68, high dihedral 69, lower dihedral, then right through to 86 with various different mods and changes. So this is a nice example of the first year of Cessna 210. And you'd think first year, oh, I won't buy that, they're learning. But there's a lot of things in this plane that are from previous models in different years. So look at this fuselage, look at this airframe, look at these doors, the shape of these windows. This is like an early 182 or 180 fuselage, so they didn't need to reinvent the wheel there. The wings, the flaps, the ailerons, they're on every Cessna 182 and 172 that Cessna had been making for the previous 15 years. There's a helicopter taking off. The IO 470, it's in everything. It's in Bonanzas, it's in Barons, it's in these, it's in early 185s, it's in Cessna 310s, it's in all kinds of different planes. So well-proven engine, Macaulay, constant speed prop, same. So the only thing that Cessna were pioneering was retractable gear. And arguably there are some that aren't that reliable, but as I've been saying quite often, if you look after them, they're good. So overall, if you're looking for fast cross-country 4-seat retractable, it does 145 knots on 11, 12 gallons an hour, that carries 1,000 pounds, this plane is an excellent candidate that not a lot of people look at. So, we have a bit of a look around it. We're not going to fly it. I just wanted to go over the details of it. I hope I've covered them. Ask any questions you've got and I can answer them in the text below. Thanks for watching. This is like a series of videos that we do for Skywagon University. When I get one in that's interesting, that adds to the sort of continuity of what we've already done, we'll talk about a plane like this. I'm a fan of these. I mean, you can tell I kind of get to know the different Cessnas. Cessna's like a production line of planes, are very easy to follow once you know the thinking behind who is making what. They just sort of mix parts up and bring out a new model, and they're still doing it today. But if you like these videos, there's a little subscribe down here. You can subscribe on there, and there's a bell to get notifications. Click on that if you like it. We're going to do more. I haven't done many recently. It's been very busy, so I've been trying to, when we get in an interesting plane, I'll do a video on it. But if you like it, subscribe, and thanks very much for watching.